So a little bit about me. Been a hacker for a while, in case you didn't know. One of the tools that I've written recently, it actually started way back in DEF CON 22 as the process detection mechanism for detecting processes in physical memory by page table detection. And there's a lot of reserved bits that you needed, and because of characteristics about how the page table is organized, in particular the self pointer, I could detect all these processes. And then we were pointing up at the screen, and you were like, oh, because there's a VM running, and it could even detect the processes in the VM, nested wise. And that gave me the idea to kind of keep developing the tool or the tool set. And here we are a few years later with something I think is pretty cool. You'll see it at the end, hopefully, but it's all on GitHub right now. It does a full integrity checking of code pages in memory, and you just golden image your VM, and then you can check it anytime you want. So that's going to be like, hopefully we get to see a little demo. Overall, the outline of what we're going to talk about today is how to forensic, how to fuck forensics, how to unfuck it. I don't know how much any of you guys have done forensics, but it can be a very frustrating proposition. There's a lot of tactics used by adversaries to misdirect you, to cause you to do extra work, and cost the people a lot of money and time. So overall, there's been a lot of techniques over the years. I've got a couple slides on like a breakout of different things that I borrowed from another presentation. But last year, in 80, did this AF presentation, like as fuck, but it means anti-forensics. And he did this interesting mechanism to break certain tools. And then the ROP stuff is going to be how forensics kind of meets reverse engineering and kind of meets like low-level analysis, and how these different domains are kind of overlapping a bit, and you've got to really have an understanding at least of these things and maybe want to look out for them. And I got some references to some other cool tools one of the guys from Cisco Talos did recently. Pretty awesome. And then CloudLeech is a rip I did on Frisk's DMA PCI leech stuff, and was going to have a demo of like unlocking a cloud container, but trust me, it all works great. It all works great. We just imagine it. Wave my hands around. So the forensic process in general kind of starts out in the most basic form of trying to understand the timeline of events that happened, and trying to reconstruct an understanding and some comprehension of like what happened, what's the capability of this guy, what can he do, how much do I have to like backpedal, or how hard do I have to come, do I have to like redeploy my domain controllers, or can I just format some backups, or unroll some tapes and we're good. So hold on. These artifacts often come from disk or log event sources, and the better you are at providing high quality sources at the front end, and like have your infrastructure being monitored properly in different ways, you'll have a lot better luck in the back end, because it's easy to tamper with one machine, but it's hard to, go after and compromise the logging that's going on in multiple systems, and to try and, if the attacker's got to now subvert remoting events and things like that, it makes his job a lot harder. So this one is talking about some different tools you can use and different ways you can go about it. Mark Rusinovich did this sysmon stuff, which really enhances the Windows event utils. But I don't know how many of you guys have or people have used WEVT util. I grew up in Windows, and back in the day, it used to just be like event log, and it was like system app programs. Like there'd be like 4 of them. There's like almost 1,200 of them. that you can configure, and this will log everything from like binaries being executed to like really the minutia of like your VPN connections, like what packets got dropped, firewalls, all kinds of stuff. And this is an amazing set of logs that can really boost your understanding and your comprehension of events, and you can tie it together easier, and it's a lot more difficult to mask your activity when you've got to kind of compromise all these different logs. Swift on security has a GitHub repo that has a bunch of sysmon configs, which will help make running sysmon a lot easier and more concise, as it were. And also, if you're in the Linux space, I don't want to be totally Windows focused here, but in the Linux space, go ahead and take a look at OS Query from GitHub. So handling memory, has gotten pretty intense over the years, and there's a lot of different tools here as well. Essentially, you want to reconstruct like what's actually running and develop an understanding of like what was running from the artifacts in memory. And this is where we start to get into the reverse engineering kind of component of it. Stephen Ridley has this really cool tool for like sandbox memory hacking. You should totally check that out. And always the game hacking space. If you really want to go farther and understand the limits of what people are doing, it's a good way to go. So hiding really well, misdirecting, and or like exploiting people. Alex Stamos actually way back in DEF CON 15 did this talk with a couple other guys on breaking forensic software, and they had like NTFS hacks, they had like encase exploits and stuff like this. So that stuff still goes on, and that's kind of in the vein of what dual core like N80 guy did last year in trying to like attack the tool. This is the overall kind of anti-forensics taxonomy, and it kind of breaks out like all these different techniques that these guys came up with, and they tried to expand on. This is like some academic guys. You can check the reference out, and they're trying to get more into this space and publish papers in that area. Sorry I didn't make the slides for the CD or anything. I'm going to upload them to GitHub in my repro if you guys want to check, and I'm also going to pass them to the media people after. Some foreshadowing is like if you can normalize your tactics as an attacker into like what's expected of the network, then it's a lot harder to be seen if you're like assumed to be like a regular guy, like I'm a VPN user, and so if the attacker gets in and just reconfigures your system and just uses what's there, so the counter to N80's anti-forensics, the counter to this is more or less there's always additional sources. Just like logs in memory, there's always going to be additional sources to take advantage of. And in particular for his, my tool, Invitero, works out of the box because I base all of the dumping on page tables, and that's something defined by the ABI in the hardware, and you can't really mess that up, so to speak, in the same way. I believe Volatility and Recall have an option for using DADs to discriminate the pages for your executables and make it easier to dump them as well. So with a little digging, you can always find a way to kind of get around this stuff. So the ROP, I know I got to make this really quick. Sorry, I burnt up so much time with the monitor. Anyhow, the monitors, the ROPs are, becoming, they're an attack exploitation technique, but now it's being seen that they're actually becoming a persistence method. So Gargoyle was like the public example of like how to interact with a ROP and make a persistence threat out of it, as opposed to just like an exploit. And it sort of waits on a timer and then evaluates the stack a little bit and sets up a window to jump in and out of, kind of like as a little splash jump, and he'll jump into one page on a timer on and off. Anyhow, the way this ROP works, it actually gets a little bit easy to detect because it's not exactly perfect either. So let me just jump right to the tools because I know I'm running so short. ROP-EMU is this really cool tool that actually will evaluate a ROP chain. And if you want to do some like analysis of like what is this ROP doing, because it's really hard to, if you've got a ROP in the stack, like understanding what all the little micro gadgets are, what gadgets are what you return into that does a little operation so that you can construct shellcode, or you can execute something. And you have to chain these together. So anyhow, ROP-EMU will take these ops and actually emit an ELF binary that you can just throw into IDA, which is pretty dope. So Invitero, my tool as well, has a ROP detection built into it for forensics. So you can, in the tool, know if Gargoyle or something like Gargoyle is running. Lots of different injection techniques over the years. A lot of these are kind of variations on a theme. You know, more or less loading a binary up and then like using part of the address space to inject your own code so that you're hiding again. Always these attackers are going to want to hide in something that's in the, you know, hiding in the trees or in the grass or whatever else. So another one, sorry to keep going like this. This is, so in a sense, the PCI leech is kind of like a code cave attack because it's an inline patch. And inline patches are really, really hard to detect because they're not modifying something that normal hookers do, which is like an import table or an entry point or a prologue or something like this. It's actually just like right in the byte stream of the binary. So unless you're actually reverse engineering or dumping like the whole address space of the OS to the, and manually going through and auditing it or something like that, you're going to have a real hard time understanding if you've been comprehensive and if you understand everything that you're looking at in terms of a memory dump. So that's where kind of integrity validation comes in, and this is the feature that I released just a couple weeks ago. And it does essentially 64-byte piecewise hashing over a binary. So all the text segments of all the binaries that you whitelist or golden image get converted into this database that then you can go and test your machines and go, hey, is this thing what I think it is? And a lot of people did pages for hashing, but you know, I don't even want to disassemble 4 kilobytes. Like a page is 4K. That's a lot of assembly instructions. So I support like a configurable size that you specify. You're like, you know, I don't want to spend any time at all disassembling. So you could just say 64 bytes. And then if it detects like a patch in these bytes, it goes right to the byte that is patched or right near it. You know, there's only going to be 3 or 4 instructions there. Tie it all together, you know, always use complementary sources and build an understanding of like, you know, the latest techniques and understand that like these things are coming and they do happen, and a lack of visibility into an understanding of these methodologies can leave you with some gaps in your understanding of what you're looking at. And my hope was to show you this tool, and it's got a really awesome output where, you know, it'll I'll just give it a shot while I'm up here. How do I get this thing out of here? Oh, there we go. If I do get a chance to run it, if I get 1 second. Hold on. Oh, that's the wrong cable. No. Oh well. They don't have it. Nuts. Wah wah. Sorry. Oh wait. Is that it? No. Okay. Sorry, everyone. Any questions? I'll go check the tool out. You know. Full integrity checking, golden image of your VM, and I also have live editing. If anyone's ever used PyDebug, I've got a similar concept where I reflect all of the native kernel, all the symbols I reflect into IronPython, which is .NET. So you can basically go like eprocess dot image path name equals foo, and it can write back to the memory image that you're looking at. So you can suspend VMware, edit it with this tool, and then resume it, and then you know whatever will happen in the kernel will happen. And the thing that will protect you is normally you've got to set up BCD entries for debugging, but if you're dealing with an advanced adversary, that'll actually tip them off that they're in a monitored environment. So when you configure the BCD debug, it changes the kernel and whatnot. So that was the concept behind the passive active memory hacking. Give a shot on GitHub, and thanks again, everybody. Thanks.